All right, let's talk about what it would take to reach 1900 V-Day. That's about 2150 chess.com. Now, the first thing I want to say about this is that the stats say that if you reach almost 1900, 2150 chess.com, you are in the 99.9 percentile. That means out of 100, you are number one. And reflect for a moment on other areas of your life where you have met somebody who was 1 out of 100. Say, for example, at my gym, I've met that guy. I've met that woman too. These people are jacked. They are totally jacked. So we're going to be looking at this game with K-Roll and Thor Biddles. These people are jacked, totally jacked. And despite them being totally jacked, what's interesting is we're going to see them making some very elementary mistakes. And when I say elementary, I mean really mistakes that can be fixed. And so I'm going to hopefully give some prods here in a not too mean way to help them grow, because there's some basic stuff that they could be doing to really help their game. And what I'm going to stress here is that the heart of the dojo training program is going over your games. It's a very painful process. It's not about going over your openings. It's not about learning tactics. It's about some basic stuff that you have to realize about the practical side of playing chess in a variety of ways, and we're going to talk about what that means here in an example. But it's going over your games where you are going to be able to fix some of the problems that we're going to be looking at today. So normally I use the scoreboard and stuff. I really want to focus on this game because I really think this is a great example of how to use your own games. So this is a dojo intramural game between Thor Biddles and K-Roll, and this is 90 plus 30. And you might say to yourself, Cry, how come you're not starting at the beginning? Because there's a point I'm trying to make here, okay? There's a really important point, and it has nothing to do with chess skill. Nothing. So it's something that can be fixed very simply. And you're going to say after this video, gee, Jesse, I know that's so easy. How come they can't do it? I suspect you can't do it either, who's ever watching, okay? Because it's clearly something that's very difficult. And what is it that I'm talking about? The minute people reach the end game, especially in online games, they play so fast. So fast. And one of the interesting things is these are notes by K-Roll. Very good notes, by the way. But at no point does he mention time usage. And it's really fascinating to me because in the end game, honestly, things become more complicated, more concrete. So you have to really dig down into variations even more than middle game positions. And the reason why is in middle game positions, oftentimes you can get an intuitive sense, say, of an attack or of a pattern. But in the end game, you really need to go deep into the variations, and that's going to take some time. Now, my thesis on why this happens so often, of people not taking their time, is they haven't played enough endgames to understand the depth of the endgame. And also, if they're playing it online, there's just natural distractions all around. In the end game, it's a little bit, you've already been playing for a while, so you're kind of exhausted. And number 4, I think oftentimes in the end game, people don't stop to think that there's other alternatives other than their first intuition. Okay, so let's take this as an example. Very interesting position. Well, I'll talk about it a little bit. It's Black's move. Looks like Black is doing pretty good. He's got some space, the better king, the better structure. But of course, White has the 2 bishops. And the big thing that always you have to worry about with the 2 bishops is the unopposed bishop. Can he murder you? And both sides weren't aware of this. And that's something I would describe as the 3rd dimension. There's a variety of ways to talk about this 3rd dimension. Some people have 17 dimensions with time structure, king safety, initiative, all this stuff. To me, that's just all the 3rd dimension. And that has to do with these qualitative things, such as the power of the unopposed bishop. Why is he so powerful? Because he's the only one talking to the dark squares. So right away, both players should be hypersensitive to any activation of this guy. And it's been going on for a while that neither player has really been seeing it. And so that should be our main concern. Okay. Now, I think still I like black's position. I think knight d4 looks very tempting. I think bishop takes b3 should be analyzed. And b4 played quickly, as K. Roll notes. What do I got? I found the game, 1 minute. And not only that, it's not like they don't have any time left. These guys both had like an hour left to play. An hour. You got loads of time. What a rich position. The game is going to be decided in a position exactly like this. Okay, so, all right. So b4 happens. And the first thing white should be looking at is bishop d2, because you're threatening bishop g5, and it looks really scary. Even if you end up losing a pawn, which I don't think you do, the bishop's just so nasty coming over and talking to your dark squares. And you mentioned bishop b2. Okay, he takes, and then, right, you say you chicken out because you finally saw that bishop d2. Would you have found it if you thought longer? Chances are yes. Now, by the way, I might sound a little mean here, but when me and Kostya and David started the Chess Dojo, we did this thing where we would cover games live, dojo games. And honestly, a lot of my anger right now is of just post-traumatic stress disorder, because me and Kostya looked at so many games where people made horrendous mistakes in the endgame because they didn't think. So let me stress, thinking is hard. Level 2 thinking as opposed to level 1. Level 1's you're just going about your daily life. You're acting on your first intuition. Level 2, you're diving a little deeper. They aren't doing it. It has nothing to do with chess skill. It has to do with something you learn to do. So I'm suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder because me and Kostya witnessed so many games. We're talking the untold masses of games where people just were not thinking about what they were doing. And it was heartbreaking. Honestly, I have to admit it. That was one of the main reasons I had to stop doing that. It was ruining my weekend. We did it on like Sunday nights. It was like the evil pill. It killed my weekend. I had to stop. I didn't even admit it to Kostya, but that was the reason. It was because this mistake, which I see so often, just broke my heart. It just broke my heart. Okay, so that's why I really want to harp on it. And I begin this Road to 1900 lecture on it because it's so easy to fix. It's so easy to fix. Okay, so here we go. Pop, 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 rook c5. So white won a pawn, and I think white should be thankful that now we're trading the a6 pawn for that e5 pawn. And here, I don't know what's going on anymore. I think, especially if you intend to play this move, some kind of rook d1 followed by maybe rook d4 is going to be an interesting thing. Okay, now white is afraid of bishop takes b3. Correct, you should be a little afraid. King b2. Now, how fast was this? 46 seconds. 46 seconds. And now, what does this allow? Rook d2. Very good. And notice what he says. In a blitz game, I would have taken on e5 immediately. But rook d2 also not played, a couple seconds. So notice that when we're analyzing, one of the reasons at the dojo that we really stress playing longer games is that so that when you analyze your games, you have the potential to review moves that you've thought about, right? Right? Very important. I can't stress it enough. These next couple of moves were played very quickly, and I think black is clearly on top. Then a weird note here by K-roll with rook f3 unclear. To me, it doesn't seem unclear. It looks like bishop b3 is a real winner. So that would be a variation that would be helpful. Evaluations, very important to express what you think is going on in the position, because here you say black is better. To me, it looks winning. Rook f3, you got to calculate bishop b3 and see how white could try to save himself. It looks bad. So then rook d1 happened. Boom, game over. Okay. How fast did... I think actually white thought a little bit on rook d1 because he finally realized he was in trouble. But it's already a little bit hard to save. And that's a thing, too, that we see. People in the endgame are only thinking when they say to themselves, oh, my God, things have gone wrong. Okay, look, I realize I'm yelling at these people, but I really want to stress that if you can fix this problem, and I know from deep experience that these guys aren't the only ones suffering from it, that they'll improve so much. And imagine you're this big jack dude. You are 1900. You are 1 in 100 people. It's amazing. And then to the next level, it's this. This is the main thing you have to fix. It's not your openings. It's not your tactics or all this other stuff. This is what needs to be fixed. And how can you do it? Obviously, going over your games and becoming aware is the most important. But we have in the dojo, we have the rook endgame progression. Something like that is just going to turn you on to, it's going to practice you in how hard the endgame is. So I really want to stress that. Now, let's go to the beginning of the game. We're going to talk about a couple more things. I love this guy's K-Roll's opening. It's interesting. It gets him to a position that he's familiar with. And let's just say K-Roll's done his opening work. Like a lot of players at this level, even though they can't think in the endgame, well, he's got an interesting opening here. And it presents white with an interesting challenge of how to play the position. Okay, I enjoy most of these annotations here. We could make some other remarks. But here I just want to stress something with this move e3. Something I think would be important is when you analyze this kind of thing is first to say, Cry's going to say that beginning at the level of 1,000 all the way to 2,300, the most common mistake he's going to say is loss of time. And so I'm going to show a couple instances in this game with loss of time. E3 definitely being one of them. As K-Roll points out, E3, I'm just going to castle and develop. Thank you very much. And from Black's perspective, he's thinking to himself, oh, I've got a weak pawn. I got to deal with the pawn. That's the least of your concerns. So here's just a quick breakdown of the way I would want to think about this position. White is behind in development. Okay? How much? 2 tempi. Because one tempo, because we're going to get this move off before he does. Okay? White, though, has a problem that this bishop is a little bit uncomfortable, even though it's his potentially best piece, as we saw in the later endgame. And so both players should be hypersensitive to containing this beast or freeing him, depending on who you are. Okay, so castles should be our main contender move here. Okay, so E3, loss of time. And one of the things, the dojo phrases that I've coined that I really like is the idea that pawns aren't people. So what is Black thinking with this? He's thinking, oh, I'm getting rid of my bad pawn, instead of thinking about the bigger picture stuff with the pieces. So notice, this is a very interesting position where you are going to claim, hey, I've got the white squares and the position's a little clogged, and this guy maybe can't achieve freedom. It's a debate. Who's better? Better player's going to win. I can tell you that right now. But the thing about E3 is not only are you losing time, but it's very much in white's interest to open the position. So one dimension is time. The third dimension is quality of position. And so this move E3 offends against both of those principles. Definitely castles was better. And now we get a mess. And this might be equal. It's definitely an interesting position. Let's look a couple more moves here. E4 is interesting. We could debate it. Bishop E2, good. And here's an interesting position, and I just want to show, look, A3. You know what I'm going to say. It's a complete loss of time. So what is he doing? He's fretting about pawns. Pawns are not people. Pawns are not people. Now, so from white's perspective, again, the question is, how can I activate this bishop? He's about to get popped. He's about to get popped. And actually, we see in the next couple moves, and all the whites just push back, and now we should be hopeful for the black enterprise. Okay, so what should he do? Well, I guess he should think about moves like bishop b6, preventing knight c6, or at least making it difficult, because then when I take, I'm opening the position for my dark square bishop, my beast. He's my beast, right? And if rook c6, then we can think about rook d6, interesting position, something to analyze. Oh, white looks a little bit better. Okay, so loss of time. Something you should say to yourself is, oh, if I conquer these things in myself, moving slower in the endgame, understanding that I don't want to give away time, I'm going to begin observing it in my opponents too. That's going to be where they give me the points in the game. All right, so you go pop. So now we're doing great, great. Huge win of time. h4. And here's an interesting moment, actually. I think what black, if he was hypersensitive to the problems of the dark squares, would consider the move h6 here, with the point that if white ever goes back, when we steal this guy, imagine this rook's going to move, and he steals our pawn, then our knight will be so beautiful, especially if we can support it with f6, which will further strengthen our dark squares. And that's where we really have to be worried, is controlling our dark squares. So here, either bishop, probably h5, or this move here, intending bishop d2. I like h5. So bishop d3, loss of time. h5. And there's again where h6 would have been better. Good move. Now, it's a funny thing because we can call it a good move, but white doesn't understand why it's a good move. I think he did it just, I don't know why he did it, because later he has all these opportunities to play bishop d2, which would be the point, because you're like, oh, here, the point of rook d1, rook df1 would be so that I could do this, but that's not why he did it. So the move might objectively be good, but white didn't understand why he was doing it. Was he moving super fast here? Yes, yes. Okay, b5, b3, controversial. Of course, bishop d2 should have been played. And now we get to the position that we reach, that we started with at the beginning of the lecture. So something I want to say about this, something I've noticed as a player and a coach, is so many of the players who are reaching toward 1900 are so good at openings. So like here, we saw a very competent opening from K-Roll. And then what's lacking really is some fundamental things that can be corrected with the stuff in the training program, but especially by going over your games. And I'm hoping that with me yelling at them, that this kind of mistake, especially with the usage in the endgame and the loss of time, can be corrected. Because what happens when you go over your own games is you're still going to make mistakes. Everybody's still going to make mistakes. And they're still going to be very painful. But what will eventually start happening is when you find yourself thinking about, say, a move like a3, which was losing time, bishop d3, losing time, you're going to say, wait, little red light's going to go off. I'm going to say, wait, I'm going to try to find something better. Is the pawn on a2 really threatening? What am I doing with bishop b3? Can I find a plan in this position? So there it is. And I think what's interesting to me about it is these players are really jacked. I mean, 1 in 100, that's amazing. And yet there's so much room for improvement. And I love the annotations that K-Roll did. Great. This is the path. And I'm hoping that then my feedback on a game like this can help him. And since I know that the problems that K-Roll has in this game are universal to this level of player, I'm hoping others can see it and use it to grow. All right, till next time. Bye.